Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of the storytelling framework for fit interviews. My name is Kenton. I'm an ex-BCG consultant, an ex-Googler, and the founder of Rocketblocks. In today's mini lesson, we're going to follow up on part 1, where we talked about a storytelling framework for fit interviews. And what we're going to do in this part is actually put that framework into action and watch me tell the same story twice, once not using the framework and once using the framework. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'd recommend you look down in the description and find the link for it there and go watch that first. This whole video is going to make a lot more sense once you've got the actual framework down. And then what we're going to do here is, again, watch me tell 2 stories, once without the framework, once with the framework, and then we're going to do a compare and contrast and see how that framework really helps set up a story so that you can deliver it with maximum impact. Great, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so imagine your interviewer asks you, tell me about a time that you went above and beyond to create a really great outcome for your team. We're now going to do the first version of this story, so I'm going to jump in. Great. A story I would like to share with you is from my time at Google, and I was on the TV ads team at the time, which was a new team building a TV ads marketplace. And what that means was it was a new online platform that would allow TV advertisers to come in and buy, manage, and measure the results of their TV ad spend in a totally online platform and across a bunch of different inventory partners. And so we were launching this product. We were about maybe 6 months post-launch, had signed up a bunch of inventory partners, and we're starting to get some traction. And we had signed up a new inventory partner that was a big deal, but one of the challenges was that the viewership and the demographic data that we needed from that inventory partner, they weren't going to be able to send it to our system in the fashion, kind of a programmatic automated fashion we needed immediately. It was going to take them about a quarter to kind of ramp that up. So one of the things that I did looking at this situation was realize that even though they couldn't send it to us in an automated fashion, they were able to send us these CSV files on a much slower cadence, on a weekly cadence, only once a week, as opposed to kind of hourly, which is what we were really looking for. But I was able to find a way to take those CSV files and then build an Excel model that really ingested that data in the format that the partner could send it, and replicated a dashboard that was similar to what we had in the online product, not quite as nice and refined and ability to kind of cut it in as many ways. But basically what it did was input all that manual data from these emails, take those CSV files, and then spit out kind of the key kind of demographics and viewership numbers of the different channels and shows that we were getting from this new inventory partner. And I was able to kind of perfect this model over the course of a week, both working with the engineering team to make sure and kind of sanity check the numbers against what we'd seen in the system for other inventory partners of similar scale, and also working with the inventory partner themselves to make sure that our representation of that data looked accurate once we'd kind of run it through this model and put it all together. And so once we had that completed, this actually made a really big difference overall and had a big impact on the team. And the reason for that is I was able to provide this model to the sales director on the team, and he took it to his team, and they were able to start using this data to start selling this new inventory. And that was important because they really had gone to market with the story of one of the key differentiators of this platform is that we have better data than you're used to buying with, and we can also do measurement on it. And so when we had this new inventory partner, but we didn't have that data, even though that the inventory was great, the story wasn't quite there. And so when they had this model, what it really did was allowed them to go to those advertisers and kind of confidently speak about the story, that the value of this inventory, and back it up with data. So that really unlocked a lot of potential. And eventually in that quarter, the revenue that we made from this new inventory partner, because we had this model, is about 15 to 20% of the total revenue for the quarter, which really allowed us to hit our targets. So that was really a great outcome. And for me, one of the real reasons why this was kind of above and beyond my normal scope of responsibility is that my role on the product team was really to understand what the sales team and what the biggest advertisers needed to adopt the product, and then work with engineering and the rest of the product team to build those features and that functionality. But it was not, to build things myself. And so typically, like, building a temporary solution like that is really out of scope of responsibility. But in this case, I saw that there was a need and that it was going to take us some time because of the roadblocks on the partner side to get this done. And so by really kind of jumping in and building this model, it provided a really nice interim solution, which ended up driving a good amount of value for us, even though it wasn't in my normal scope of responsibilities. Great. So the story I would like to share is from my time at Google. And I had just joined a new team that was called the TV ads team. And what we were doing was we were building a new online marketplace for TV advertisers to buy, manage, and measure their TV ad buys online. And this had never been done before. It was brand new for Google as well, but it was a really attractive market. The US market for TV advertising at the time in 2007 was $70 billion, so it was massive, represented a huge opportunity. My role on this team was on the product team, and my specific responsibility was to really understand the very largest advertisers in the space, understand what their demands were and what their needs were and what would convince them to start buying on an online platform like this and starting to manage some of their TV buys this way. And then also to really understand the key needs of our sales team and what they needed to be able to sell to those advertisers. And then once I had that knowledge and could prioritize it, the responsibility was really to work with engineering and the rest of the product team to make sure that was prioritized appropriately so that we could execute on those initiatives, have the engineers build what we need, and launch a successful product. So as I was doing this, one of the key things that really surfaced was that the inventory we had on the system today at the time was good, but it was not good enough to start bringing some of the really big TV advertisers onto the platform. And specifically what we needed to do there was we needed some new partners, broadcast television partners like ABC, NBC, CBS, the kind of big boys like that. We needed some of that primetime inventory on the system. And so when that became clear, we started working with the rest of the product team and the biz dev team primarily to try and see if we could get some of these deals cut so that we could bring some of that inventory onto the system. That ended up working out. The biz dev team did a great job. We were able to sign one of these big partners, and the sales team and the rest of the team too was really excited about this because it meant really big revenue opportunities coming up, a big kind of step up for the business. And appropriately so, the sales team and the leadership of the team built that into our quarterly projections. We had this new inventory source coming online in the current quarter, which we had like 2 months left of. We thought we would make a really big impact with that. The challenge was, as we started exploring the details of it and going through some of the implementation stuff with the partner, we found that some of the key pieces of data that our system worked with in terms of surfacing information to the buyers about the viewership of the channels, the demographics that those viewers fell into, the kind of raw numbers of viewers, per channel and per day part, that information, the partner wasn't going to be able to deliver it to us on the timeline we wanted. They were going to be able to do it, but just not within the quarter like we were hoping for, which meant that the brand new inventory that we had acquired, we weren't going to be able to effectively sell it. The sales team would have the inventory, they would know it's there, but they wouldn't have all the data that the team had promised, and that the rest of the system was set up that way with that amount of data from our other partners, and so it wasn't going to work the same. So that was a big challenge because it meant we would probably miss our quarterly projections now because we didn't have that key piece of inventory. So the stakes were really high. And unfortunately, everything we tried to do in terms of loaning engineers to the partner company to see if that would help and they could kind of embed with that company and help them get the data over to us, or if we changed our system a little bit to accommodate them, we really were just kind of hitting a standstill on all those fronts. And so it seemed like we were basically hands tied and there was nothing we were going to be able to do there. So as I was thinking about this problem, one of the things I realized in some of the action I ended up taking was that the partner, obviously, they had this information. They just didn't have it in the format we needed and the capability to get it over to us. So, but I did notice that they were willing to pass CSV files to us on a weekly basis. And, not via any sort of real system, but basically they would just email them to us. But I started thinking about, well, if we get actual CSV files on a weekly basis, I might be able to do something like build a dashboard manually through an Excel model. And of course, it won't be perfect. It won't do all the type of things that our product does with the other inventory partners we have. But if we can get enough insight out of it into viewership and the core demographics on a weekly basis, that might unlock that inventory and allow the sales team to start selling it. So I went ahead and started building this model and taking some of the CSV files we'd received, inputted into it, and then sanity checked it. Sanity checked it with our engineering team, sanity checked it with the partner themselves to make sure that the data looked accurate after we'd crunched through it and kind of put it into this dashboard. And then once I'd done that, we sent it over to the sales director and said, here is a lot of the information your team's been looking for. It's obviously not in the product, it's not real time, but it should give you a kind of first step and a chance to try and go start selling and moving some of this inventory. And so the sales director and his team took that and they started getting results almost immediately. So we started selling this inventory. It gave the sales team enough information and credibility and some of the data promise that we had really been going to market with to start moving that inventory. And the end result was that they ended up selling, I think 15 to 20% of our revenue that quarter came from this new inventory, which was great because it enabled us to actually hit the quarterly targets we met. So the sales team was super happy, the leadership of the company was happy, whole team was really happy that we'd basically been enabled to meet the quarterly target by getting the right information into the sales team's hands. Now, I think finally, the lesson for me on this experience was that sometimes perfect is the enemy of good. We obviously didn't have the perfect solution in place, but what we were able to find was a good enough solution that really enabled the sales team to gain some momentum, start locking down some clients, and start delivering on the promise. And that had real impact for us. It had real revenue impact, had real momentum impact, and created a lot of excitement on the team. So it was a really great outcome and a great lesson for myself as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and compare and contrast the two tellings of the story. And there's really three things that I want to point out about the differences between the two versions. The first is context. The context and setting of the stakes is much better and much more kind of specific and detailed in the second one. It really gives the listener a sense of what is the scenario that I'm operating in, what is my role within that scenario, and why are the stakes so high. So that's really good context to have, and if you actually go back and look at the first and second versions of the story, you'll notice that a lot of the difference in length comes from properly setting that context up front. So that's the first difference. The second difference I want to talk about is the actual ordering of the parts of the story. Now, if you go back and look at the first and second part, you'll notice that a lot of the same bits are there. There is some context in the first one. There is some discussion of the stakes and the results, but they all kind of come jumbled together, and they all come after the action I took, which is what was led with in the first story. But the second story does a really good job of setting up a nice, logical narrative. So it starts with the context that I'm operating within and why the stakes are so high. Then it jumps into the specific actions that I took, the results that were achieved, and then finally the lessons learned. So as you go through that logical flow, it really all makes sense. The listener is kind of primed to understand what those actions and results mean because they get the context and the stakes, which came first. It's kind of like a comedian delivering the punchline at the right time versus just like starting with the punchline up front and then giving a bunch of context afterward. So the ordering is really good in the second story. The third big difference, and I think better thing about the second story, is that it really ends on a nice strong note. Notice that the original question that was asked was not tell us about a lesson you learned when something went poorly, but the story even though that wasn't the original question, it ends on a nice lesson that the candidate learned, which demonstrates that even when things go well, this candidate is always learning and taking away lessons for how they can get better and operate well in the future. So that's a great thing to demonstrate and always point out. So those are the 3 reasons that the second telling is much more crisp and will hit with more impact than the first one. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. There's a red button below and a video overlay which will pop up soon. We've got more great content which will be coming out soon. Thanks, and see you soon.